You're listening to Women's Dream Enlightenment. Dream decoding, deep discussions, and spiritual stories of self-discovery to inspire your personal enlightened journey. I'm your host, Megan Mary, founder of Women's Dream Analysis. Let's bring in the light. Welcome. Today we have Kris Ashley. Kris Ashley is a dynamic coach, author, speaker, podcast host, and television host with a passion for personal development, spirituality, and science. She has spent over 2 decades immersed in the research and teachings she shares. In 2022, she published her first book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, which received endorsements from spiritual and self-help heavyweights Michael Beckwith, Marcy Shimoff, Bob Dole, John Gray, and Anita Moorjani. Today, Kris is a regular panelist at personal development events with the Los Angeles Tribune and is the director and lead trainer of their Leadership Academy. She is also the host of the television show Beyond Reality on the Ethereal Network. Welcome, Kris.
Thank you so much for having me, Megan. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, this is a wonderful exchange because I was just a host on your podcast, and I love really just doing these guest exchanges. It's so much fun.
It's really fun. And I was just telling you before we went on air, you completely changed the way that I interpret dreams now, the way you interpreted my dreams. So I was very blown away by the work you do.
Ah, wonderful. Well, I will put a link to that in the show notes so everybody can listen to that episode as well. So the first question I'm going to ask is the one that I start with everybody, and that is, what does enlightenment mean to you?
Yeah, you said that you were going to ask me that about a minute ago. So I've had about a minute to think about it. And the first thing that popped into my head was knowledge, because I'm a truth seeker. And I've been a truth seeker since 2002, which is funny because we had a little blip where you said something 2002 instead of 2022. And I was thinking, I was like, oh, wow, that year is so significant to me. So you somehow intuited it. But I've been a seeker of knowledge ever since I had a spiritual awakening. And to me, enlightenment is that knowledge, but not just like book knowledge, but also embodying that knowledge. And for me, it's been learning about the higher realms and the other side of the veil and my soul purpose here and all of the things that it encompasses. And I think that that's as close as we can get to enlightenment in our human body, is really understanding that we're vast and expansive and interdimensional, and we're so much more than this meat suit that we have on, and that we're all connected to each other.
Yes, that knowledge of the worldliness, the expansiveness, the vastness of our existence and of the universe is definitely what I think of as enlightenment. It's not really an endpoint. It's a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I view Earth life as a school, and it's one of many schools. And when we leave this incarnation, we go on to the next one. And I think it's far from the end point. I think it's just one little grade, one little level.
Yes. So I'd like to share with the listeners today your spiritual journey. On this show, we always have other women come on and talk about their stories of spiritual awakening and what led to their unique experience. So tell me about yours and where it began.
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey began in a place that you've probably had other guests also say, and that is my own trauma. So when I was 12, I was sexually abused by a family member. And I had this really big, tight-knit, extended Italian family. Like if you've ever seen my big fat Greek wedding, we were like the Italian version of that. Everyone's big and loud and in each other's faces, and we would sing anytime we were around each other. And the sexual abuse went on for 4 years. And when this big, tight-knit family found out what happened, many of them disowned me. And people who had been like second mothers to me were writing me letters and leaving me voicemails telling me they didn't love me anymore and I wasn't their family anymore. And as you can imagine, this left me with a lot of low vibration emotions like anger and guilt and shame that as a young adolescent, I didn't know how to cope with. Most adults don't know how to cope with those types of emotions. And so I was in this downward spiral. I turned to drugs, I was cutting, I was getting in trouble in school. I was in a really dark place. And then my world totally changed when someone handed me a book. And what this book did is it showed me that there were other ways of thinking and being and kind of processing life on earth, and that there was so much more going on than what our eyes can see, than we're aware of. And I remember turning the pages, and it was just like, it just felt like truth. And it was kind of like a sleeper agent, right? Like something inside of me just woke up. And when I finished that book, I started reaching for more. And I just became insatiable. I started devouring every metaphysical, spiritual, new age, personal development book I could get my hands on. I started going to retreats. I found teachers to study under. I was doing all these healing modalities. I was really doing the hard inner work, but I thought I was just unlocking these mysteries of the universe that no one knew about, right? And this all started in 2002 when someone handed me that book. And my life did a 180. I was starting to manifest things. I was really changing my perspective, changing my mind about the nature of reality. But the other part of my story is as my life was starting to change, my mother started to get worse because her family had been ripped down the seams and she didn't have these healing modalities and books and teachers that I did. And so it manifested as physical illness for her. She got cancer. She got a bunch of other really serious illnesses, but she also got a bunch of really bizarre afflictions that her doctors like had no idea. And so they did what they do. They gave her pills. And then they gave her pills for the side effects of those pills. They're just kind of throwing everything at the wall, hoping something would stick. And at the height of it, she was on a fentanyl patch. She was on 11 different pills, including Dilaudid, which is another narcotic. And she would fall down all the time. She would nod off at the dinner table. She would forget conversations we had the day prior. She slept for all but a few hours of daylight. And that lasted almost 15 years. And I had this compounded guilt that I had destroyed my family and broken my mother. But I believe everything happens for a reason. And I realized that my mother was my biggest teacher. Because for every step that she took deeper into depression and illness and victimization, I climbed in the other direction out of that dark tunnel. Because I was seeing firsthand right in front of my face what happens to a human body and spirit when we make that choice, because it's always a choice. And then I was seeing what was happening to my own life as I was simultaneously on this other path, right? And I was seeing my world change. And so I made myself a promise, and it's a promise I've kept to this day, that I would always do everything I could to heal physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and I would always prioritize my health in those categories. And I'm still reading a book a week and like I'm still going to every retreat. I buy every course because the learning never stops. I've already been talking about knowledge, and eventually I wanted to give back after a couple decades and took a life coach training with Mary Morrissey, who's wonderful, and wrote my book, started my podcast, started my coaching company, and now I'm just on this other path and it's really beautiful.
That's an amazing journey that you've been on. And it's not unlike a lot, yeah, like you said, a lot of stories that I've heard, a lot of women in particular working in this space. We are all wounded healers, essentially. We've all had something that we've gone through that has forced us to look within and to realize that we are the ones in charge of our health and that our health isn't just our medical bodily health. That a lot of our medical bodily symptoms manifest because of our spiritual health and our emotional health from traumas and from held energies and emotions and patterns and experiences. And that it's really up to us to take that initiative to start to do that healing beyond the traditional, here's a pill for that, and then another pill for that pill.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people get to a point where they're like, I have like a crossroads, right? Like I can either reinvent myself and heal and forgive and get better, or I can fall into this resentment and this illness and this blame and this victimization. And, that's not a life, right? And I think so many people are in the healing arts because it takes going into the darkness to like really see that much light. And when you've gone through it, you're like, I don't want other people to suffer for decades like I did, right? You're like, hey, let me show you what took me so long to learn so that maybe you have an easier time of it.
Absolutely. And or walk with you in the darkness, right? Which is what I always say, because the dream world is that other side. And it is that other side that a lot of people don't know how or don't want to access because they're afraid. And many times they just need someone who's been there and someone who can walk between those worlds to accompany them
Mm.
till they can do it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, one of the things I really am fascinated by myself, and that I'd love to talk a little bit more about on the show today, is quantum physics and quantum healing and all of the aspects of the quantum. So, tell me how that is involved in your work and how that's influenced your journey.
Yeah, I love geeking out about it. And one of the things I really love to do, I do it in my book, I do it on my podcast, is to back all the spirituality up with science and the personal development up with science. And I think we are living in such an exciting time because science is finally saying what mystics and spiritual teachings have been saying for eons, right? Whether it's epigenetics or neuroscience or quantum physics. And quantum physics is the scientific explanation for a lot of spirituality, for a lot of what we talk about with the law of attraction or this interconnectedness. So it's such a great way to teach the work too, because sometimes spirituality can be off-putting depending on someone's background, if they come from some sort of religious background or some sort of belief system. And it's kind of that common ground that everyone can get behind. And also it can get those more left brain people too. So, I mean, there's so many aspects to quantum physics. I guess the first one that jumps out is that quantum physics says that, there's the many world theory that says there's infinite number of timelines and spaces that are happening at the exact same moment as ours. And all possibilities exist in this cloud, in this realm. And they exist there until you choose, right? When you make a choice, that timeline kind of opens up before you. And we talk about that in spirituality all the time. And there's entanglement that talks about how we're all connected and how one particle can influence another one that's light years and light years and light years away, instantaneous, without a second between them. And, I mean, like, pick your poison, pick which way you want to go, because it's so fascinating because it's like all these things that we're saying are true and provable, and we just live in this incredible world. There's this statistic I love that says the human eye can only see 0.0035, I think, percent of the visible light spectrum. So 99% of our world is invisible to us. There's so much more going on than what we're aware of, and it's so exciting to explore.
Yes, I love that. And on the same path, there's tons of frequencies that we cannot hear as well. So, and this is proven, both of the things. And so when we consider those things, just like Wi-Fi, everybody knows it exists, but you can't see it, and everybody uses it, and it's just an assumed thing. But yet, there is such doubt about so many other things. And as we're sitting here today, it is the full moon, harvest moon, super moon, lunar eclipse, and we have had X-class flares all week. There's a lot going on celestially, a lot of electromagnetic frequencies coming down to us. And there is a lot of interaction going on there that a lot of people might also dismiss. They can see that, oh, yes, we can see this on TV. We can see it's happening. Oh, isn't that interesting? But I think that in everyday life, there's a real separation between the celestial influence in our spiritual life and our connection to the spiritual realm and the interdimensionality of the galaxies and all of that. I think that's really dismissed in a way, and we can scientifically quantify it, but where spirituality and science meet is yet to be determined.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because when you look back at history, no one believed in gravity or no one believed in electricity or whatever it was until it was really proven and harnessed. And the awakened community knows these forces exist. Of course they exist, right? And countless people have had interactions with them, whether it's even people who have had past life experiences or people who have had NDEs or people who have done dream work or energy healing. So we all know it's out there. I feel like people are starting to wake up. Back in 2002, when I had an awakening, like I couldn't find other people to talk about this kind of stuff with. And now it's everywhere, right? Like law of attraction is like a hashtag on Instagram that has who knows how many hits on it, right? So I do feel like people are starting to wake up and there's I don't know. I'm just thinking like the medical community, even like I just went through fertility treatments not that long ago, and the clinic was like, you should get acupuncture. That was part of their treatment. So it's slowly starting. But I think the world is waking up. And I think 2020 had something to do with it too, right? People were home and starting to realize, like, wait, it was like a forced pause. And it was like, okay, wait, there's more to life than just work, eat, sleep, entertainment, money. Like, oh yeah, there's this connection with nature and there's this connection with each other and we can go within and find stillness and or be in community. So I think it's happening slowly but surely, but it's definitely the rest of us that have been on this journey for a while are just kind of sitting back watching like, okay.
Yes, it was definitely a wake-up call, and it was also, like you said, an opportunity. It's interesting to see what people did with that space. People were consuming content and books and learning and creating and really doing things that they would never have had the opportunity to do that were really expansive activities. I think that was a chance for a lot of people who were part of that ascension, that expansion that's happening. And not everybody can be part of it. Not everybody wants to be part of it, but there are a lot of people who are having that awakening that are part of it. And that was just maybe one of those times that the earth cooperated with us to say, okay, we're just going to destabilize everything for a little bit. And it's not going to be easy, but you'll see that there's going to be a lot of opportunity in it, right? There's like a silver lining.
Totally. I mean, I say the same thing all the time. I took every course I could because everything went virtual. I wrote my book, but other people had a really hard time, and that's okay, right? Like we're not here to shame anyone. And you made a good point when you said, not everyone is going to be on that spiritual awakening. Like there's that whole idea of like 5D and 3D earth splitting, and it doesn't mean that anyone's left behind or people are less than or anything. Like people are on their own soul evolution and they recycle back into maybe another incarnation here in another 3D space, and it's fine. There's millions of souls on the path ahead of you. There's millions of souls on the path behind you. Your timing is perfect and it's all just part of it.
Yes. It all happens when it's supposed to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
The universe has its own, I would say timeline, but it's not a timeline because there is no timeline.
Yeah, right. That's when it
Time and,
gets trippy.
yeah, time and space don't really exist.
It's all happening right now.
Yes. So on your podcast, I had the opportunity to interpret one of your dreams, and I love to integrate the discussion of dreams on my show and talk about how that's been influential, if at all, for you on your journey, because a lot of people have very much had profound experiences, whether they be lucid experiences or premonitions or visitations. And for me, that was really the gateway for my awakening. So, did you find that dreams played a role in yours as well?
Yeah, and I think it was you actually who told me the other day, you're like, you're clairvoyant. And after our call, and I've been thinking about that ever since, but for as long as I can remember, I'll have a dream about someone who I haven't seen in like years, and the next day they'll call me. Or I'll find out that they had a baby or got married or some big life event. And I lost my heart dog and my dad within the last like year and a half, and I have visitation dreams all the time. And I mean, they're not like dreams, right? It's a visitation. Like I know
Yeah.
my dad is dead in them. And we'll just be sitting and talking, and I'll just look at him and just be like, God, I miss you so much. And he'll be like, I know you do, but I'm going to keep dropping in from time to time. And he'll give me a big hug. And like we have these conversations like that. And I have them somewhat often. And I actually had like a real visitation from him. It was one of the coolest experiences ever. I get sleep paralysis, and I've had it forever. Maybe you have some spiritual thought on that, but I've always gotten it, and it always happens when I'm falling asleep. And it used to like really scare me, and sometimes it still does kind of freak me out because it's that idea of like I'm awake but I can't move. But I had this crazy experience where I was in sleep paralysis and I had this dog like sniffing my face. And at first I was so annoyed. I was like, "Ah, Shane, my husband let our dog Wooly in the room." And I told him I was going to take a nap and why is he in here? And I realized it wasn't Wooly. And then I realized it was my parents' old dog, Casey. And then I looked on the floor and it was my old dog, Soda, running around. And then I looked next to me in the bed and my dad was right there. And he was like, hi. I got the impression that he had been trying to like break through. And it was such a him thing. He's like, brought the dogs, right? We're animal lovers. I can just see him being like, come on, guys, let's go visit her. So I've had a lot of really kind of clairvoyant moments and dreams. And yeah, and it's interesting. Like I never really thought about it much as something like unique until I was talking to you actually.
Yes, I mean, we all have all of those clear senses, right? We just need
Yeah.
to activate them. Many times when we start paying attention to our dreams, that can be the catalyst for us to start not just receiving information, but sensing it in our waking life, seeing the synchronicities and the subtle symbolism in things in our waking life. Once we start looking at it in the dream, all of a sudden we go, oh, isn't it weird that? And we're still so prone to dismiss it. Nevertheless, it's very significant and we have to pay attention. So I was editing my second book this morning, and there I am writing my beat sheet, and I get to September 17th. I'm like, isn't that funny that that's today? No, it's not just a coincidence. And even I can find myself brushing it off. Well, yeah, of course, because you're I'm writing and it's based in September, and that's just a coincidence. But it's not. All of those things that we notice that we think, oh, isn't that funny? Isn't that weird? Those are the little breadcrumbs from the universe pushing us along our way.
So what do you think that breadcrumb was trying to tell you? Like little signs like that. Like what's the significance of that? Is it that you're on the right path, you're doing
Yeah.
things at the right time? Like what is it? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And it's the same when I see the people call them angel numbers, but really just numerologically
Mm,
with the
yeah.
time, because you can look at the clock at any time. But if you happen to start seeing them multiple times throughout the day, certain days I do. And it's always, oh, it's 11:11, it's 3:33, it's 5:55, you just happen to just always see that throughout the day. That's not a coincidence either.
You know what's funny about that? I mentioned my dog had died. Since the day she died, twice a day, every day, without fail, for almost 2 years, I've seen 555.
Yes.
And I finally talked to a pet communicator about it. She's like, oh yeah, it's her. But yeah,
Hmm?
no, totally. Totally the numbers for sure.
Yes. So I just love looking into my dreams and looking for those things also throughout my daily life. Just, I think being cognizant of it allows more in. The
Mm.
more that you kind of go, yeah, okay, and you acknowledge it, the more you get, the more it just keeps coming and coming and coming. And I find it supportive and comforting.
Hmm. You know what's been popping up for me the last week too is smells. And smells that remind me of my dad. And it's like, are you there, Dad? And
Yes.
and that's kind of a new thing that's kind of come on.
Now that's another one of the Clair senses is being able to smell something that you associate with someone that has passed on for sure, or even being able to smell something that's associated with if you're picking up someone else's energy or
Mm.
you're doing a reading or whatever it might be. So that's called clairalience. And so the integration of the regular senses, so clairaudience, being able to hear something, but then being able to hear from the beyond, being able to smell something, being able to smell from the beyond, being able to see something, but being able to see something from the beyond. All of those things are part of that clairsense activation, really.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said like dreams can be the kind of portal to turn that on. And as you tap into it, other things awaken. So, no, honestly, I feel like it was you saying that that was like, oh, okay. And now it's in my head, and now other things are happening. So it's kind of a cool journey. It's kind of fun to see what else
Yes.
happens.
Yes, I love that. Have you been writing down your dreams since the episode?
I haven't had a dream since the episode, actually.
Oh,
Yeah, no, it's
the f-
interesting. I
the
haven't, but
f-
I always, yeah, I always write down my dreams.
yeah, the full moon for me is high volume dream time.
Really.
Yes. And just as women, we cycle, but we also are so affected by the cycle of the moon, and we don't really notice that until we start paying attention.
Mm.
So eventually, I'm going to produce a dream journal that actually allows you to track the moon phase at the same time, because I think it's so fascinating to recognize the parallels that happen there.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. I love the title.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit like it sounds. When we change the way that we look at things, when we change our perspective, entire worlds can open up before us. And part of changing your perspective is a lot of what we've already talked about, where there's so much more going on than what we're aware of, right? And I back it all up with quantum physics and all these different stories. So it's whether we're talking about soul contracts or whether we're talking about being able to heal yourself, right? Or heal relationships. If you can change the way you think about pain or illness or the things you've gone through, then your story changes and your life can completely change too. And I also talk a lot about the law of attraction and give little journaling exercises and to help people get really clear on their vision and then help them navigate that gap between where they are now and what their dream life looks like and removing the things that block all of that from working. Things like your belief system that you've had since childhood or holding on to grudges. There's a whole chapter dedicated to forgiveness, holding on to repressed emotions, just having a specific story, being in a victim mindset. So it's really completely transforming your life. And a lot of it is rooted in the journey that I went on to. So there's a lot of like personal little anecdotes sprinkled throughout too.
I love that. That's really what makes it, I feel, so much more accessible to people. It's when you really tell your own personal story, which is why we podcast, right? So that we can really deliver that conversation that feels like it's happening in a vacuum and allows the audience to just be a fly on the wall in our personal, very deep conversation about all these ethereal concepts. So it's important to allow space for that vulnerability because in that authenticness of sharing your very personal story, that's where people connect and resonate with you and really start to feel one, not so alone on their journey, but two, validated in their experience.
Absolutely. And you're right, it happens in a vacuum. People, especially with trauma, people don't want to talk about it, but sometimes they don't even know to talk about it. Like I think back on my own self when I was 12, 13, 14, 15, I was really angry. And I had all of this feelings of guilt and anger and all of these things and depression, but I didn't tie it back to like, oh, it's because I went through this thing. You know what I mean? Like it took a long time. You open up any psychology textbook and it's like trauma victim PTSD 101, like every symptom I had, but I didn't know that. I thought I was just alone and I didn't understand what I was feeling. So I think the same thing goes with spiritual awakenings too. The more we can talk about it. And I think you're absolutely right in being vulnerable because then you're authentic and people connect with you. When you're not authentic, people can sniff that out, right? And we don't need any more fakeness in this world. We need authentic healers and people living from their heart, right? That's what this world needs.
Yes, absolutely. Because when you step into the path as a healer, you have to let go of everything you thought you were anyway.
Mm,
Or you cannot embody that path truly. You cannot be truly in alignment if you're trying to be something.
yeah.
You have to let it all go and become the vessel for the message,
Mm.
which is really the process of that spiritual awakening. It's really what allows you to become the messenger.
I love that. Yeah, you're just a channel for it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a great way to put
It's
it.
it's the only way it can happen, be
Yeah, you have to be
received.
of service, right? It has to be greater than you. Because people
Yes.
can sniff that out too, right? If you've ever been to like a talk or listened to a podcast or seen a speaker and they're just up there because it's like an ego thing versus like really wanting to be in service of the audience, you can totally feel that.
Yes. Yes. And yes. And so at some point that message isn't gonna resonate with people and isn't gonna be received because it's not coming from a place of authenticity. So energetically, it's on a different wavelength, let's say, and it's not really going to have the power that something else would that was coming straight from the heart and that was really genuine.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that just takes us full circle to a lot of people who are on this path have walked through the fire themselves and they can just speak to it on a different kind of level.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming on and telling your story and sharing your book and sharing what you do so that yet another story can be out there for other women to really identify with. And hopefully the message resonates with them as well. And if people would like to find you, where can they find you out in the ethers?
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity. So, krisashley.net is my website, and Change Your Mind with Kris is my handle everywhere. I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. Change Your Mind with Kris Ashley is the podcast. Beyond Reality is the TV show that's going to be launching on the Ethereal Network. And Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality is my book. It's available in paperback, ebook, audiobook, anywhere you get your books.
Excellent. I love having it in all different formats. That was definitely one of my requirements for mine because people need to be able to receive it in whatever way they
Yeah.
prefer. So
Did you record your own audio?
I did not. I had an amazing award-winning British narrator, Pearl Hewitt.
Oh, cool.
I wasn't going to attempt to do 13 different characters, a talking cat, and a British turtle. I'm just not an actress. So,
Oh, that's great because your book is a fiction book.
yes,
Okay. That's
yes.
fair. That's cool you got a British person to do it. I recorded mine and it was super fun to be in the recording studio and that was a fun experience by itself. So
Yes, yes. For my nonfiction, I will. But for this time, I had to leave it to the pros.
yeah, that makes sense for fiction for sure.
Yes. Well, thank you so much again for being here. And I will put all of your links in the show notes as well so that people can come find you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for listening. Did you enjoy this episode? You can now send me a text message and share your experience. Be sure to subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Head over to my YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button as well to be part of my growing community. Are you ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey? Don't miss out on the new Dream Empowerment programs. Unique opportunities for you to unlock your inner wisdom, discover your authenticity, align with your higher self, and bring abundance into your life. If you'd like your dream or awakening story featured on my show, submit it today. Your dreams have the power to inspire and enlighten other women on their journey. Visit meganmary.com to find out more.